And I don't think technology is going to disrupt agents. I think agents with technology can, make it harder for agents without technology. And I think agents who know how to, and brokers who know how to quickly adjust to whatever the commission norm is in their market will beat out those who are slow to adjust.
You talk about it privately, we talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered Podcast. I'm your host, James Dwiggins, along with my co-host, Mr. Keith Robinson.
Yes, sir. No crazy uncle today. Just Keith.
I just went with the old school. I just wanted to keep it real. So
keep them guessing. I like it.
Tell us about our incredible conversation with Mr. Clayton Collins, the CEO and founder of HW Media. You all know it as HousingWire.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really, really thoughtful conversation. He talked about entrepreneurship through a lens that we don't always get to talk about, which is through acquisition, how to build and grow your company through acquiring other companies. He talked about how he wants to build the Bloomberg of housing, which I thought was A, awesome, and B, needed. And the approach that he and the team are taking is really great. He gave us some fundamental leadership advice on how to build a company, tech, and the importance of the human in the process. And then the big takeaway for me was being the local voice in your local area for the national headlines as a way to combat communication, confusion. Just a really, really smart guy and a really, really great conversation.
It was a great show. Tune in, everyone. Clayton, welcome to the podcast. We are excited to have you here today. I'm just going to bring this in. Show us that paddle in the back, because let's just, what does it say? Give us just start us off right. What is that right there? What's it?
Okay. So we had a really boring company vision statement. And last year I hired Brian Boero and Mark Davison from 1000 Watt to help us freshen up. And
friends of the pod.
Did a lot of branding work, but one of my favorite things that came out of that session with the 1000 Watt team was our new company active voice statement, or whatever we call it, which is impress your colleagues, bore your family to tears. And I'm sure we'll talk about my background a little bit more.
Hilarious.
My dad is a mortgage originator, and nobody knows bore your family to tears more than someone who grew up around parents in the mortgage or real estate industry. So I feel like I have lived this, and now I will in turn bore my family to tears.
Well, and the pickleball paddles, for context, before Clayton dives in here a little bit, at the gathering event, there's a pickleball challenge for guests, and Clayton magically manages to pick locations where it's 100 and something to do the challenge, and so you guys have on-site EMS and everything else for. I'm totally kidding, by the way.
So we acquired Real Trends in 2020, and Real Trends, the Gathering of Eagles, had always done golf tournaments. And we started to grow the amount of people that attended, and started to see the demographics change a little bit. Not everyone was interested in being on the golf course for 4 hours. So we introduced pickleball, and it's been a wildly successful new tradition that has started at all of our events. So next year,
shout out to Sarah Bonnert from Zillow for leading the charge on getting heat stroke. So,
man, condolences.
We've also introduced spray misters and other cooling devices to make sure that we get none of our guests end up in the emergency room.
Not that we need to do an hour on pickleball, but where did this sport, quote unquote, even come from? Now I know I'm going to get tons of hate mail, but this was nowhere 5 years ago. I never heard of it. Now it's on SportsCenter's top 10 or whatever. This is wild.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the theory is it came from the Villages, Florida. Now I'm going to get hate mail. So, all right, Clayton, enough joking around. We really do appreciate you being here. We know you're a busy guy. You got a busy schedule. Just for viewers and listeners, just to know a little bit about you, give them a little bit about your background. Obviously we found out your dad's in the mortgage space. You sound like you come from a real estate real estate group of people. But give everyone just a little bit of background on where you've been in your career, and then sort of how HW Media evolved and all of that. And we'll dive into some main questions.
Yeah,
so.
go. I already gave you the childhood, so I guess I'll start at my professional life now. So I started my career at Citigroup in a rotational leadership development program, but I was in like probably what would have been like a mortgage banking rotation, but this was in 2007, 2008, 2009, and very little money was going out the door. It was all focused on deposits. So started my career at Citi in retail banking, went on to lead a national level sales and marketing program at Citi for retail banking, all about cross sell and helping expose depository clients to credit cards and mortgage and home equity. And we were starting to build kind of the early stages of what like a 360 client view looks like at that point, and starting to cross sell, like identify opportunities from different financial triggers. So a really like foundational place to start my career. The industry exposure was valuable, but what was like probably most important is at the age of 24, I was leading a branch in Manhattan with 24 employees. And so really got like thrown into the fire in general management and leadership at a really early stage of my career, and something that wouldn't have happened if it really wasn't for the financial crisis. I think there was a lot of more expensive talent that had to go, and cheap me in a rotational program looked like, he can manage something. Let's throw him into the fire. So started at Citi, went back to business school, and after my MBA, went into investment banking. And I was doing investment banking at RBC and fell in with a group that did a lot of tech, media, and telecom deals, and advised on a handful of small digital media sell-side transactions that I got to work really closely with the owners and general managers and CEOs on, and absolutely loved and was just interested and like just so curious about running these like small to mid-sized businesses. And like, big M&A deals get all the headlines, but often like the bigger deals are like purely financial transactions. And in like the small and mid-size M&A, like it's really like strategic and operational and management change that happens in every deal. And I thought that was fascinating because we're not just like positioning these businesses as great assets, we're positioning them as great assets for the next owner or the next CEO. And like it creates a whole business strategy case that has to be made. What
did you learn about leadership in that sort of small to mid-size M&A deal, and like evaluating it and culture transitions? Like those can be turbulent sometimes. Well, if you had to crystallize that 2-year period or however long it was into like a North Star of learning, what would you say?
I'd say there's like a sliding scale. Like the smaller the business, the more the business and the team and the culture resemble the CEO. And as like businesses scale up, like they're able to like start to take the business and the culture can start to take a complexion of like the broader team and its processes and like other leaders inside of the management chain. But at the really small side, like the business like directly resembles the CEO. So if you have somebody who's extremely inclusive and curious, you end up like with this like inclusive, curious, adventurous organization that'll go test new things. But if you have somebody who's like in a protectionist mindset, who doesn't want to like disrupt anything or is afraid to rock the boat, you end up with an organization that like just like runs status quo. And so I saw that on the M&A advisory side. You start to see like the organization and the ultimate trajectory of that organization really resemble some of the characteristics of the leader that's in place.
Interesting. Yeah, it resembles a lot of real estate. You know, it's a key leader in it, and then it's almost like the older the company, the less adventurous, using your words, they are. You know, they're more just trying to keep things the way it's been for a long time.
Well, it's the famous book, right? The Innovator's Dilemma, but scaled down, right? Like once you have something, you really want to hold on to it, and you're scared of losing it. When you don't have anything, you're like, well, let it rip, right? Let's go. Let's try some stuff. Yeah. But then once you start to gain, you don't want to lose. Yeah. It's a common conundrum.
The other thing that's hard to see from the outside is, but really makes a difference, is capital structure. And like you start like, businesses that are wholly owned by a big Fortune 500 might have like a different mandate and how they spend or how they can grow. Companies that are 100% owned by a founder, depending on where they are in their growth cycle and how much cash the founder is taking out of the business, you might have different levels of risk appetite. Like someone who's sitting on their whole net worth in a business, sometimes starts to act a little more cautious. And so you start to understand some of the motivations of corporate strategy driven by capital structure and like founder owner, like financial situation.
Also sounds like real estate.
Yep.
Yeah. So before we get into HW Media, I think you're at, is it Riamar Capital?
Yeah.
Is that right? How did you end up there?
So Riamar is a kind of a special purpose private equity fund that I started when I left RBC. So I was at RBC doing M&A advisory. Like I'm getting the bug to do something more entrepreneurial. Rewind a few years when I was in business school, I learned about this model of entrepreneurship through acquisition, and the entrepreneurs, the CEOs who instead of starting the next great business from scratch, go out and find something to acquire that they can lead, put their personal touch on and drive forward with some growth strategy. And looking at the skill set I developed to date in general management and M&A, I was like, that is exactly like what I should be doing. So I went out and found a group of investors to back me to go hunt for acquisitions, and left RBC in 2014. A few months later, was up and running with Riamar, hunting for deals, looking at different industries, knew some characteristics that were going to be important to me. I knew that I needed a company of a kind of a certain revenue size that was growing. It was not a turnaround scenario. We're looking for a strong asset to jump on top of and drive forward, not to have to come in and reinvent the way things are done or change out the whole team. And during that process, I was spending a lot of time around tech services, information services in the real estate and mortgage industry. It's an area I was incredibly interested in, felt like I had some advantages in from growing up around real estate and mortgage, having a background in banking. And so I was hunting for everything from like software to AMCs to property management companies and inside of this ecosystem that we now operate today. And when I was hunting for deals, I was actually like reading and using HousingWire to help like identify companies. And like we have our Tech 100 award program that spotlights 100 tech companies. And we have like all these other like profiles and advertising features of tech and services, businesses and housing. And I was like scouring the pages of HousingWire and reaching out to founders and CEOs. And in that process, I was at a cocktail hour in New York. I was based in New York at the time. And I was telling a guy I met about what I was doing and what I was looking for. He's like, "Hey, I met a banker who like was talking to this company. It's like in business, B2B media in the housing space. You should talk to him." And he mentioned the name of the company. I was like, "Oh shit! Like I know HousingWire. Like I'm familiar with that." Like when you're looking at small acquisitions, you're never looking at companies you've actually heard of. These are all like just super niche players, and like usually I don't even know like the space they operate in, much less the brand. And so when a friend mentioned HousingWire, my eyes lit up, and a couple of weeks later, I'm on a plane down to Dallas, meeting with the founders and running forward.
Yeah. Let's pin it right there real quick. Keith and I have a lot of questions we want to ask around that. We do want to get 2 rapid fires in just really fast. Keith, why don't you start us off real quick?
All right, we asked these questions of everyone, and we actually collate this, and so we'll put a link to at least the book.
Yeah, for viewers and listeners, our website now has all of this as a reading list, by the way. So just that.
And we'll put it in the show notes for you. But
website.
Favorite book or podcast this year, or in the last year, or ever? But just what do you either listen to on a regular basis from a podcast basis, or a book that's really impacted?
Okay, there's a new show. I don't know if it's new, but a new show to me I discovered called Business Breakdowns, and they did an episode in the last year on Constellation software, and that was like one of the only podcasts I've listened to 3 or 4 times in the last year. And it was just a phenomenal breakdown of the business, talking about asset allocation, where the initial capital came from for Constellation, how they have not raised additional capital as they've done additional deals. They've been flywheeling capital from their acquisitions into continuing to build the Constellation portfolio. And then also talking about the operating culture of like really distributed management and decentralized. So phenomenal.
So episode. Keith knows that group really well, by the way. Clayton, this is why he's kind of smiling.
Yeah.
He's like friends with a lot of people.
Great group. I mean, and super smart. What they've built, the way they build it. Not surprised, since they build a lot through acquisition. That is something that tickled your fancy. I've got a follow up rapid fire. I know I'm already off script, but moving from New York to Dallas, what's that like?
So I'm from Florida originally, school in North Carolina, worked in New York. So I haven't always been like a New York City kid, but
gotcha.
But like Dallas for HousingWire was the first time I moved like off the East Coast of the US. And I really only like visited Dallas for like due diligence trips and a layover in DFW. And so it was a completely new territory for me. And when we moved here, I thought it was like, here for a deal, like I'm here for like 3 to 5 years onward. That's changed a lot. So we've been here 8 years. My wife and I have had 3 kids since we lived here. Dallas has turned out to be a fabulous place to live. And even though we don't have family here in Texas, it's been like definitely a place that like we're very lucky to have ended up.
For sure. All right. Number 2, James.
2. If you could have lunch with someone current or historical, who would it be and why?
So I think just off of like my current like business curiosities, Michael Bloomberg. And I'd love to spend time digging into not so much like the last decade of like political work, but more so like the 80s and 90s of building Bloomberg and building it, becoming like instrumentally important into the operations of Wall Street as an information services and data player. Is just incredibly interesting to me.
I mean, it'd be a hell of a lunch. So, all right, we'll take it back to where we pinned it. So, HW Media, I'm going to go through a few notes I've got. So founded in 2016. And obviously you guys acquired HousingWire and several others. So talk to us about all of that. Like basically you've kind of been on this journey with what you've been prefacing.
Yeah. So going back to Reamar was my like investment entity. I started HW Media purely as like the holdco to complete the HousingWire acquisition. So like obviously the name's kind of like tells the story there.
Yeah, sure.
But we had a thesis from the beginning that HousingWire had built an incredibly strong brand and an audience moat and some newsroom DNA that was hard to replicate and that we didn't really see in many other places. So we had an incredibly attractive asset, and we can use HousingWire to continue to grow organically, but also to be a platform for future acquisitions. So when I initially raised money to acquire HousingWire and wrote the initial business plan, like I knew and even had soft circled some acquisition ideas that like, hey, these would be businesses that would complement HousingWire extremely well. So our strategy, like with HW Media, has stayed really consistent. Like it's going to be a bit an entity to hold and operate HousingWire, to serve as a vehicle for future acquisitions, and also integrate acquisitions into a single business or small collection of businesses that brings information, data, and content to professionals in the housing industry. So a lot of that we figured out we can do organically, and we've gotten good at attracting and hiring, recruiting great journalists and writers and content creators. And there's other capabilities we knew we needed to acquire to really build in, or at least build in on the timeline we wanted to. So we've done a few media acquisitions of note. We've acquired 2 reverse mortgage publications, which I think is all of them, and then rolled them into HousingWire as our reverse mortgage vertical. And in 2020, we acquired Real Trends, which had the media and research capabilities, but best known for its rankings, which just this year we rebranded a collection of small rankings brands as Real Trends Verified, when and ranking the top performing brokerages, agents, and teams in the country. Verified, as we've started to integrate Real Trends into HousingWire, we moved all the news and content and research into HousingWire, and the Real Trends website, just like in the last few months, is being relaunched as Real Trends Verified, which is all about the rankings and all about agent and brokerage and team discovery. and we have some more replatforming to do in terms of how that database works. But we have a pretty big vision on like how Real Trends data can help unearth and help like referral partners or consumers discover the best agent in their team for their scenario. Which I think we all know that you Google
Steve Murray, he's a legend.
Steve, Steve still serves as the senior advisor to me and HousingWire. It's awesome to have him as a sounding board and an advisor in the business. And
he's one of the smartest.
Yep. Yeah. Recently he's just been a source of confidence. Like the man, you go through 40 or 50 years, a couple like decades in real estate, you're like, hey, we've seen a flavor of this before. We don't all need to set our hair on fire.
Okay. We'll be all right. You guys also have Logan Mohtashami, right?
So Logan's our lead analyst.
He's one of my favorite follows.
So I was following him
phenomenal
for many years, and in like 2019, right before COVID, recruited him to come like right for us full time, and
that's wild. Great
it couldn't
kid.
have been timed better. I mean, it was like right as like the financial markets started to implode and then expand quickly, and he was right there talking about it, writing about it, and has had some takes that have proven to be incredibly accurate. The guy's
hot ones too. He's willing to go.
Hey Clayton, can we get him on the show
at any time?
Of course.
Stay tuned for that email, Clayton.
Literally, I'll send it after. And then Altos, right? So you have Mike in there as well, and he. I mean, nerdy but smart as shit. Like that guy is just he sees things at a really interesting level too. So, and that's the real estate data side, or sort of the economic side.
I'll send Mike this episode right at like the clip point when you say nerdy. But
he would take it as a compliment.
He takes it, So we've actually had him on the pod, and it was a great pod. Not only is he know the economy well, he knows how to do Burning Man correctly.
But it's like, Clayton, I've watched from the sidelines as you were building this out, and Mike is someone that I've followed for a very long time and have used his data. Logan is someone that I've followed. You're just out here collecting infinity stones and putting them all at HousingWire. Yeah, and Steve Murray. I mean, it's crazy. It's kind of wild.
We have a big ambition of building out the full picture of data and information and news to help housing professionals make better decisions and be informed about the market. Yeah. And I mean, we need great people to do that. So I need to I've said for years that my highest and best use here is to direct corporate strategy, attract and recruit and retain the best talent, and to make sure we have the money to do it. And and I've been fortunate to attract leaders in the business that can run operations and keep us running forward. And Diego Sanchez is the president of business, Jennifer Laws, who leads sales, Sarah Wheeler, who leads content, Mike, who's leading data and research. We have just great people here in the business. Mark Adams, who leads Real Trends, Breno leads events. We have just people who've been around for a bit, and they can run operations and grow the business and kind of free me up to keep my eye on the horizon and where we're going to know next.
How have you done that? Because you've aggregated some great talent and talent that has built things on their own, bringing those people together. Like from a leadership standpoint, how do you manage the personalities and the diversity of thought? And I mean, people who are used to running their own companies and now they're doing it sort of under your umbrella. How do you manage that?
I mean, so every deal we've done has had a little different complexion. So it's not I don't have a one size fits all answer to that. So with HousingWire, the gentleman who founded the company, Paul and Richard, they transitioned quickly. Paul was out in 3 months strategically. Richard was with me for about 9 months until we hired our new sales leader, Jennifer, who's been with me for 8 years now. But that was the plan, right? I knew I needed to learn as much as possible so they could transition out of the business. Similar scenario with Steve, similar scenario with the business we rolled Reverse Mortgage Daily out of. That was complete transition. Management wasn't involved. But with Altos, big part of the deal is bringing Mike into HousingWire and knowing that we need his knowledge, not only in terms of the Altos playbook, but also one of the smartest people out there in housing market data and housing market SaaS. And that's valuable to our organization to bring that talent in. And each of those scenarios is, come with different pros, cons, wins, losses. And it's hard bringing a leader in who's been an entrepreneur, but if you get it right, you bring in a leader who brings in new perspectives and experiences, and like someone who can make the playbook stronger, not just come in and be a role player.
It's really smart that what I latched onto immediately when you said it is it's not one size fits all in these structures. It's about the person, what their goals, desires, dreams are, your vision for what you want to build. How do those two fit together? Is really, really wise. Like for anyone listening, that's business 101, whether you're trying to add an agent to your company or thinking about growing your brokers through M&A, or you got a tech piece that you're trying to bring to the industry. That is textbook.
And there's something
smart.
Like I would always hesitate from calling what I'm doing a roll up. Like, I mean, we're building like through acquisition in a way, but also organically. And like everything every deal has had a different purpose and in the strategy. I have friends who are running more like straight up roll up strategies where like, one size fits all. And like, it's about velocity of doing deals and tucking them in as fast as possible. And some will work better than others. And some people will flake out, but as long as you acquire fast enough, like the big picture will be okay. I don't think I can do that in media. Like, I just don't like a big part of what we're trying to media and SaaS, like a big part of what we're trying to bring in is like brand and product. And like, that's, like you just can't screw that up. Like it just takes there's not enough targets in like our little world for me to like go out there with the velocity of doing like 4 deals a year and saying, if 3 work, I'm good. Like
it's a big industry, but it's a small industry.
Exactly.
So yeah. So who are you acquiring next?
Any breaking news?
I don't think I've been doing podcast.
I'm totally messing with you. But on a slightly lighter comment, what is some interesting tech tools that you guys are you don't have to divulge what specifically, but what do you think what's of interest to you, or where you think there should be more interest? And if you just say AI, I'm gonna have Keith get upset. So,
we're not gonna. We are hosting an AI summit on July 23rd. So if anyone is interested in AI and housing,
and we would be there if we didn't have conflicting stuff. We already actually,
maybe a few of your audience.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes. We'll put a link to that in the show notes too.
So we're not going to talk AI. So going back to like the vision of building like the full picture of housing information. So we have like we've done these like 4 acquisitions of note and a few other small ones. We're bringing most of those pieces together into what we think like the HousingWire of the future will look like. So in the background, like we haven't brought this to the forefront yet. Like we have a beta platform of like what like HousingWire news combined with Altos data and Real Trends, real estate information, and some partner data on mortgage rates and other housing market data, like what that looks like in a platformed environment. So like that's what's happening behind the scenes right now. And so as I think about like where resources go, whether that's hires we make or acquisitions we do, it's to support that like consolidated HousingWire's like pro level strategy. And this like, it won't be the product for everybody, it won't be for like the onesie twosie like agent or someone who like reads a HousingWire article once a month. But it will be for like the
people that are full-time professionals. Yeah.
So I think we will need to license and like partner on some data points, and we will probably need to acquire some data or businesses that have a certain data capability to bring this to life. And so that's where the energy is right now.
Well, it kind of answers the question I was going to ask about the covering. You guys have done a really good job of covering residential and mortgage. It's been and you had 2 different events, technically, if I'm correct, Clayton, and then you've merged them now, which I attended a month or 2 ago. I can remember. It's all blur. It's really, really well done, by the way. I actually thought it was really interesting to have the blend of mortgage and residential in the same spot. Very different interests, but not at the same time. It was cool to see the residential people hanging out with the mortgage people and vice versa. Certainly it's relevant with all of the nonsense going on in our industry right now.
Do you have to do like a translator? Like, do you have to do subtitles when the speakers are up there?
Depending on a few more which
side of the aisle is.
But no, oddly enough, in this environment, I think a real estate audience might have known more about mortgage than our mortgage audience understood about what was happening in terms of like lawsuit land right now.
Yeah. And both industries are hyper focused on purchase right now, which of course that's, if we have the same objective.
So when you talk about we merged together the Real Trends Gathering of Eagles and HousingWire Annual, which, probably had a little more of a mortgage flavor in the past. But that's been the HousingWire content strategy since 2008 when the company was started, 8 years before I was even involved. And like the founders for HousingWire had a vision that a lot of the downstream impacts of the financial crisis could have been less painful if there was better information sharing and knowledge across the housing industry. And like at the time, and still to an extent there is today, there was a mortgage servicing magazine and real estate publications and a capital markets magazine and mortgage origination executive magazine. And like the MBA had a really specific take on the industry, and NAR had a really specific take, and nobody was cross-pollinating in terms of information or collaboration. And like HousingWire was founded, I don't think they used the word at the time, but to cross-pollinate knowledge and professionals and start to hopefully have mortgage and real estate people and title and appraisal and all the tech people in between to start thinking of themselves as housing professionals and understanding that housing is an incredibly important part of the U.S. economy that has incredibly large downstream implications on household wealth and education and health and like all these things that we do, if we do it right, impact the American homeowner in a really positive way. And so we talk about the business of mortgages, we talk about the business of buying and selling houses, but like ultimately there's a multi-trillion-dollar asset class that has a positive impact on the United States. And that's like kind of the lens that we look at this through.
I love it. I love it. And it's interesting because I was talking with a friend of ours, Chris George, who runs CMG Financial. He was mentioning how for a long time, MBA, NAR used to work together and then didn't for a long time. And that, they're trying to get quote unquote the gang back together. And that you saw a bit of that with VA, getting some of these rules changed where MBA and NAR were actually, weird concept, communicating and doing these things together to work towards a common goal.
Unheard of. So
let me move this just a little bit, Clayton, just for time's sake, but I really want to get your take on this being, a media company. So mainstream media's coverage over the past 9 months, like why, give us your take on why it's been so inaccurate. And I really want to focus in on this. What should the industry be doing to counter it, fix it? Like, I feel like the industry is just so lost and we're just getting crushed. This week there was an article from Newsweek that said that there was only 490,000 agents in the United States. I'm like, where do you even get your information?
Don't they at least have to do a Google search before they go to print?
Can they?
All right. I think everyone made a mistake in like how they reference like NAR or pronounce realtor or like not use like the capital letter or something at some point and realize the absolute like thunderstorm of pressure that comes down on you if you mess up anything related to the National Association of Realtors. Can you imagine how much pressure came down on Newsweek when they misquoted the number of agents? It's like,
wow. I mean, I don't even know how you get that wrong.
No. So I got a couple of theories
is it just,
there, James. So one, it was always frustrating to us as a media company that focuses on housing 365 days a year, year in, year out, cycle in, cycle out, is that when real estate becomes a front and center business or economic topic in the US, all of the mainstream business publications and mainstream other publications like Newsweek ramp up their real estate coverage because it drives traffic. Like everyone's interested in real estate and talking about mortgages, talking about home sales, talking about the commissions lawsuit, talking about inventory constraints, talking about affordability problems drives a lot of traffic. And when everybody wants to ramp content production in one vertical at the same time, there's a lack of real estate journalists out there for those people to hire, and they end up moving people off other beats. So like there's other parts of the business like beat ecosystem that are less active right now. Let's say metals and mining. So let's take a metals and mining journalist and move them over to housing. This is a really hot topic because interest rates are moving really fast.
He or she is not busy right now.
And think that journalist is going to come in and like have the right sources and like understand the the terminology and understand the cyclical pressures and understand, all the stuff that we talk about all the time. And so like everyone wanted to do the same thing at the same time. And there's not enough talent to go around, and they want to move fast, and the internet does not always reward accuracy. It rewards speed and great headlines. And like, it doesn't create an ecosystem where, I don't know, not a great ecosystem. Right. And then like, so I think the industry goes wrong is like that news, like, I didn't read that article, so I'm going to stop pointing at it, but an incorrect article, like pisses off the industry. And then you have a million real estate agents, because we know it's not 400,000, kind of crash down on an article, which gives it a ton of traffic, and they share it and they comment and get engagement. And now the editor at that publication thinks like, this article's genius. 2 million people read it today, and it just keeps driving engagement on social channels. And like,
shit, I got to stop commenting on this stuff then.
yeah. James, really somehow we're part of the problem.
Apparently I'm part of the problem.
But I mean, it's so
Google
strange.
Analytics doesn't measure accuracy; it measures engagement.
No,
right. But you said it, I think, earlier, when it doesn't matter if you're late and right, because no one will hear you. Right? It's like trying to sell salads at McDonald's. Like, good luck. Right? So if it's almost like their only option is just to be fast, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll figure that out later. Who cares?
And
that sucks.
Like,
that sucks.
And like getting it right all the time is almost an impossible task. I mean, we cover housing like I said, day in, day out, cycle in, cycle out. And there's definitely things that we've like gotten wrong or misstepped on in the past. And that's when we try to move slow and do multiple sources and talk to experts and talk to lawyers in the right scenario. And still, it's hard to like get things perfect. So if your only incentive is speed and you're not an expert in the industry, and you don't have people like Keith, you and James, like on your cell phone to like text and get like source verification really quickly.
What does this mean?
Like a journalist is, it's an uphill battle. And like, I think that like the journalists at HousingWire, their phones, their emails, their social channels are stacked with housing professionals that they can call or text or ask for help like really quickly, and get like people who like, care enough to say like, actually, no, that's not how it works. Or actually you should talk to so-and-so, or like Susie's the expert. Don't listen to Bill. And like, and like that great journalists have those networks. And if you're a generalist business reporter tasked with covering an intricate topic like housing, and you don't have a network of sources, like, sayonara. It's not going to be good.
It's just going to be crap. Yeah.
And we've talked about this on the pod before, but I'm going to do it again because it's my Don Quixote-esque tilting at windmills. But like, we can't control bad media, or I don't know what I'll call it, bad, inaccurate media. We can't control the reality of their space where they have to be fast more than they have to be right. But what we can control as an industry is, and James has talked about this in detail multiple times, and so have I, it's being the voice in your local market, because real estate is so hyper local, and being the voice with your 200 people or 2,000 people, however big your reach is as a company or as an office or as an individual agent, you already have a position in those people's minds as the real estate insider intended. And so you have an opportunity to be the voice for the people in your world who matter. Right. And you can't be a voice nationally. You're not going to get the eyeballs that some of these other companies do, but you can be the one that interprets it and points out the fact that it's wrong, and then shares that information so that your people know that you're the source.
It's funny, Keith. I did a keynote last week in New York, and there's about, I don't know, like 800 people in the audience, whatever. The point was, we were talking about media, and you could see everybody frustrated, and we were all kind of, talking about, laughing. Of course, I was making jokes. But then I asked the question, I said, how many of you in this room, raise your hand if you guys have had a local media strategy or tried to reach out to any local reporter to talk about any of these subjects?
Did one hand go up? I'd be shocked.
None.
0. Yeah.
And I'm like, and that right there, everybody, we can talk shit, but the reality is no one's trying to solve this either, So I guess that's a follow-up I wanted to pinpoint on, Clayton, because you're obviously in the industry. Like, what should the industry be doing? Like, what is happening that we're not, why are there not articles being posted or picked up that are talking about these stuff outside of HousingWire, to be clear, because I know you guys do. But I'm talking about mainstream media.
So, I mean, it's industry involvement. It's also media to media involvement. So like we are at HousingWire, we're involved with helping fuel better information at the kind of national outlet level. Like, so Logan's on CNBC a couple times a month. Like he's brought a lot of like great perspectives on housing market data, often contrary to like kind of the pitch. So like when you go on national TV, you usually have like a booker come and like say, hey, we want you to talk about XYZ that we saw on CNN. And usually like Logan comes in and says, I will be there, but I'm going to show you a different viewpoint with data. And so like, that's how we like try to combat it. Like get outside of like, we touch a lot of housing professionals and mortgage and real estate, but how do we touch the broader business community by being a source on CNBC or other outlets? Real estate professionals, mortgage professionals can do the same thing. And like, it might be harder to get a slot on CNBC, but you can do that with local. And, you know, that's been a strategy that, great real estate professionals have been using or great financial professionals period have been using for a long time. I have never thought about this lens. My first internship in finance was with the UBS branch. And every single day, the financial advisor I worked for, I'd prep her talk sheet, would go on the local radio station and read like where like the Dow closed and where the S&P closed. And like, so she was like informing financial content in her community. And we also see a lot of real estate professionals do that. So like I'm here in Dallas, Rogers Healy is a big independent here in Dallas.
Shout out to Rogers.
Yeah.
Haven't seen that guy in a while.
Rogers is awesome. We've got the chance to hang out socially a few times recently and see each other through industry events. But I mean, he's been extremely active first on local media and then national media and like has earned a platform. I think he's on a TV show now, on like it's like an entrepreneur pitch competition, but like he's earned his like way up in terms of like being a voice for the industry and being a voice as an entrepreneur.
And even if you don't have access or willing to try to get access to local media, like you have a Facebook account, right? Like you have people who are listening to you. If you can just get the 200 to 2,000 people in your life to think of you as the information resource when it comes to real estate, like whether you're building a tech company or a brokerage or an individual agent, you'll have a great freaking life. Like you will have all the things that we said you could get when you come into this.
That frame of 2 or 2,000 is important because I think people get a little bit obsessed on social about like, you know, 4 or 5 figure, 6-figure reach numbers, like vanity metrics. But like, if you're trying to build a local real estate business, like how many people do you actually need to touch and be in front of? And I think there's 2 lenses that are important if you're a housing professional trying to increase your influence or how you translate information in your community. One, translating national headlines to local headlines. So your consumers are seeing way more national headlines than they're seeing about their local real estate community or local real estate market. And we know that there's not really a national market. We're a collection of hundreds or thousands of local markets. So if you see a national headline on home prices coming down or bubbles in certain places, that might not apply to where you live. So like bringing local context to national headlines. Yeah. And then there's the other strategy of just talking about local market data, what you're seeing in your neighborhood or community. And I think it's got to be hit with both lenses because I think there's a lot of consumer confusion in housing right now with low inventory, mortgage rates moving quickly, and like there's context from national headlines that has to be brought to the local level that no one else is going to do for you.
Yeah. Hey, Keith, that might have been the final question that you would have asked anyway. Like, what would you implement today if you're an agent or broker?
You're right.
And I love that, by the way. National headlines at a local level. Just for time's sake, I do want to get 1 or 2 more questions in before you go. So I know you've got a schedule to hit. I think it's important. I'll take the first one, Keith, and you can take the AI one because I know you're really deep into this right now. Sure. So 36 months from now, take 24 months, 12 months, I don't care which. What do you think the space looks like post August 17th? I don't know if you can't divulge this, but are we going to deal with a lot more negative headlines? And how disrupted do you think it's going to be? Because I've seen, Wall Street pundits saying that there's massive disruption. I'm not in that camp, as you know. I'm like, there's going to be some disruption, but not nearly to the degree of what some of these analysts are saying. What's your take on all of that?
Yeah, I have a viewpoint on like technology and the commission's lawsuits that are kind of similar. So like, and I don't think technology is going to disrupt agents. I think agents with technology can, make it harder for agents without technology. And I think agents who know how to, and brokers who know how to quickly adjust to whatever the commission norm is in their market will beat out those who are slow to adjust. So I think as we look forward, and I thought you were going to go a different direction with that question. I was looking out 12 to 36 months, talking about what we see in the housing market. I'm
thinking just more about disruption of the industry.
But I think whether we talk 12 months or 36 months, we're going to see an increase in sales volume and hopefully in mortgage volume as well. And so there's going to be some positive tailwind coming into the industry at the same time as people are trying to adjust.
That's a good point.
That we're trying to adjust to this new commission norm. And I am not in the camp of massive disruption. I am in the camp that the strongest agents will likely aggregate more of the business, and there will be a continued flight to quality. And that might make it a harder industry for part-timers and passerbys and newcomers into the industry. So can we better serve home buyers and sellers if we have a fewer number of great agents who have skills that they developed through repetition and doing lots of deals and advising lots of clients? Yes. Would that be a good thing for the market? Probably. Will it make it harder to have a diverse, inclusive profession that anybody can come into? Yeah. So I think we have to be intentional about how we recruit the right people in, and then how we train them and resource them as executives.
Interesting.
Yeah, I might push back a little on I think as an industry, we've sold maybe an incorrect bill of goods. We've told people it's easy. If you like people and you like houses, you can, make a ton of money, get a white Mercedes and have a 2-martini lunch. Right. And so maybe we've projected or sold the wrong bill of goods. But while I do think there'll be some gating issues to success in the future, and some of the skill set to be successful in the future is different than the skill set, say, pre and post August 17th or whatever date it all kicks in. It's still a place where you can come, and if you have an entrepreneurial mindset and hard work, and you're willing to sort of, eat it for a year, because the learning curve is steep but short, but you get to the other side of it. I mean, I don't think we're not pulling the ladder all the way up. I don't think with the changes that are coming. I think that there will be a new force ranking of important skills, and the people who either have that or have adopted it will have success, and the ones who don't won't. Mm-hmm. That will be true for new and experienced and for everyone else.
Do you think there's actually an opportunity for the new agent who's trained in the new regime of how commissions are communicated and negotiated, might actually find success versus those who have to, reverse decades of habit?
Yeah. A 28-year-old me would have, coming into the real estate industry, if I were to come in right now, I'd have crushed it. Right. Because now it's all this is unfettered, and I get to design and curate my experience, and I can charge whatever I want for my buyer experience. And I now have freedom and autonomy and control over how to shape and create that. That would have been a really powerful experience for me to have, versus the way it's been done in the past. I always had the ability to create it, but I couldn't guarantee what my income would be. So I couldn't architect something with a guaranteed revenue number. So it was hard to manage the expense load when I wasn't controlling the revenue number. Right. Mm-hmm. And now I have the ability to do that. That gives me much more freedom and opportunity.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very interesting, Clayton. My numbers are, we're going to see attrition somewhere between 20 to 40%. To be clear, those numbers included last year. Yep. So we're already seeing some of that now. And it's all dependent upon whether a buyer can finance their buyer's agent's compensation if the seller's not offering any. That's the wild card in all of this, because if not, I think you'll see a tremendous amount of unrepresented buyers or dual agency, both of which are really bad in general. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that from the industry perspective. It's just bad for the buyer all the way around. But we'll see where this all turns out. Keith, last question. Take us home on the AI one. So
Yeah, sure. Since you gave us the classic, what would you implement in your business, which was be the voice in your local market, I'll just ask you a quick AI question. It's a little unfair because it's nuanced and early in an emerging market, but how do you see AI disrupting loan officers and real estate professionals?
Keith, I'll go back to what I told you my highest and best use is at HW Media, and that's recruiting, attracting, retaining the best talent, attracting capital, and driving corporate strategy. None of that included being an expert on
AI expert.
It's going to disrupt the loan officer. But
see, the beauty in that is true talent will tell you, I don't know, right? Yeah. Good answer.
I don't know, but I do know that we've been talking about tech disrupting agents and loan originators for a long time. Forever. And the consumer still appreciates some advice, but I do think the best people can be better with the right tools. And so I think I've said this once before in this conversation that I think there's going to be a continued flight to quality, and top performers in real estate and in mortgage will have a larger part of the market share. And that will be better for consumers because reps and seeing scenarios and understanding situations helps people give better advice. And if they're powered with the tech tools to not be distracted with like too much business, we can handle a lot of conversations. If you have technology and resources helping you out with other parts of the process, then I think it's a good thing for the industry, and like the best people will grow and consolidate market share.
Yeah, this has been running around a little bit, this quote, but I like it, is you're not going to get replaced by AI. You're going to get replaced by someone who is comfortable and versant in AI, right? Yeah. That's what's going to happen.
Clayton, my friend, it's awesome to have you here. It was a great conversation. Congrats on all the success. Can't wait to hear about some new acquisitions or whatever you're working on next. Love the idea of the Pro product. Love to see that whenever you guys are bringing it to market. And I'll look forward to a pickleball tournament with those paddles at some point.
All right.
I'll hold your guys'
next
beer.
Summer, the Broadmoor, next June, I believe.
I already registered, my friend. I'm there. So that is the best location possible to hold an event for anybody who's thinking about going to real estate.
We might need a practice tournament before then. So
there you go.
Thanks, Clayton.
You got it, buddy. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
It's our job to say out loud what everybody's only thinking to themselves. It's your job to subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode.